Okay, so in this video I want to look at a couple of different things in Blender here. This is version 2.91 and I'm using the i3D exporter tools from the GitHub page. This is version 2.0.1 I believe we're up to now. There is a dev version, but I've opted not to go with that one. But I want to look at a couple of things, like I say, skinning meshes, skinning of mesh skinning. I have no idea. The terminology is a bit weird. Called parenting in Blender, so you actually parent an object with various different attributes. But the process that's used for Farming Simulator is called skinning. But I guess the parts that work behind the scenes, it's all very much the same. It's just the way it's coded and the way it's termed and things like that. So the idea, or what I want to try here, is to first of all skin my bones to the mesh, and then or parent my bones to the mesh, or whatever else, parent the mesh to the bones. It's going to make a little bit more sense as we go through it, hopefully. I'm still learning this process myself. It's very not complicated, but it's a bit, yeah. The way it's done in Maya is much simpler in my opinion, because you have all of the tools there. You just click some buttons and it tends to do most of it for you. The only thing you might have to adjust slightly is some weight painting. That is very similar to what we have to do in Blender, but there's a little bit more work that is required in Blender because we still don't have the ability to actually export animations out in the correct way, because it requires character sets and things like that, which are not created in Blender the way that Farming Simulator needs to have it set up. But we'll go through the process, hopefully, of all of the different parts, and in theory it will make sense. Let's hope so. So first of all, I'm going to turn on my screencast keys, or the screencast keys. They're not mine. I didn't make them. Somebody else did. Let's just see if we can move these somewhere where you might be able to see them a bit better. We're going to delete everything. So A, select everything, X, and then delete. And I'm going to bring in a mesh here. So we'll just go File, Import, Wavefront OBJ. And I've got this blue shark that I want to have a play around with. So I'm going to import that. Now at the moment this is scaled up way too much. So we first of all need to change our end clip distance so we can see things. And then we're going to scale this down somewhat to the correct size. So if we go into side orthographic here, or right orthographic with 3 on the numpad, then we're going to scale this down. Now, from my understanding, a blue shark is about 3.8 meters in length, roughly. So this is going to be on the y-axis. So we want to get the y-axis here down to about 3.8 to 4 meters. Don't have to be 100% accurate, but I'd like to get it somewhere closer. I'm going to press S and just drag in and keep doing that. Keep an eye on the Y scale here until it gets down to roughly around about 3.8-ish. There we go. That'll be fine. So if I press the decimal point on the numpad, that will zoom in and focus on the selected object that I've got here. I also want to rotate this. I don't want it facing that way. I want it facing the other way. So I want the head to be on the left and the tail to be on the right. So I'm going to go RZ180 and then left click to confirm that. So, and the other thing I want to do is move it up somewhat. So I'm just going to go GZ and move it up just above the grid here, something like that. Now, because I've scaled it, rotated it, and moved it on various different axes, I want to zero all of those out. So I'm going to go Control A, whoops, wrong buttons, select the mesh, Control A, and apply all transforms. This will then zero everything out and put the scale back to 1, 1, and 1. Fantastic. This will give us a good basis to start building up all the different parts. At the moment it's got no textures on it, so we're going to have a play around with those and get them all sorted out. This particular material does have some stuff going on, but I didn't add this material. It's one that come with it. So first of all, I'm going to turn off the alpha blend and put it back to opaque, because that causes some issues there otherwise. And the next thing we'll do then is we'll open up a new window here, go to the shader editor, and we'll fix the location of the texture because it's not finding that at the moment, which is why it's pink when I go into the Eevee render or look dev mode or whatever you want to call that these days. So we'll open up the folder, go into the blue shark folder here, and then click on the color. And there we go, we've now got some color. I won't bother adding in the others, they're not really required for this at this present time, just to give me something to look at other than a black or a pink shark. So we need to now add in some bones and set all those parts up. Now theoretically I could come into here, go right orthographic, Shift A, Armature, start adding in some bones, and then, you know, place them in the appropriate positions and whatever else. But if you go into your preferences and then just type in here rig, you should find this add-on which comes with Blender called Rigging Rigify, and this gives you access to various different other objects and automatic rigging of meshes and things like that, which you will find over in your panel over here somewhere. But the only thing I want to get out of that so far is the fact that it gives me access to some pre-made rigs, and if I go into the animals, we have a shark. Fantastic. So I can click on this one and it will then bring in my shark. Obviously everything's a little bit out of whack at the moment, not quite the right size. We need to play around with that and rescale some stuff down. Well, actually, facts, because I now have rescaled this somewhat and done some other things, the shark is actually still too big. So we'll go down a bit further with this to 3.8 because I was watching the wrong axes. Good job. Okay, so that's a bit better. Now on the Y axis, we've got our 3.8, whatever. Could go a little bit less than that. Something like that, maybe. That'll be fine. You could potentially scale it to match the rig, but I find it easier to manipulate the rig, but whatever way works for you. So we'll reapply the scale again. So we'll just do like that. And we should be good to go. Right, so as you can see, all the bones have now come in and they are roughly positioned right, but we will need to make some small adjustments there to get them to work the way we want them to. So can't really see them very well at the moment. So if I select the armature group here and then come over to the object data properties, we're going to the viewport display and click in front, and now that will put the bones in front of the mesh irregardless to what angle. So if I'm in front orthographic, back orthographic, bottom orthographic, top orthographic, they will always end up being in front of the mesh so we can see them much clearer. Yeah, that's the right word. So I think in Maya it was called X-ray mode or something like that, which we do have, but doesn't work quite the same way for bones. So it's just much easier to click the little button here or tick box in front, done. Easy peasy. So we're going to play around with the bones here and get them into the right position. So if I just get rid of that a little bit, and we'll get rid of that so we can see things a bit clearer. So first of all, then I'm going to select the armature group, tab into edit mode, and we can start selecting some of the bones. So what I will do is I'm going to delete some of these because I'm not going to animate the entire thing. So I'm going to get rid of those. We'll get rid of those. Don't need any of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. I have to rename some stuff, but that's okay. We can possibly do that. Just wondering which one is parented to what. That's the problem. What I'll do is let's take this one and we'll move that down here, and we will delete those. There we go. That's better because that is parented to the nose. That one there. So we can then move this one around however we want to. So what I'll do is I'll select this and then go up to somewhere at the back of the jaw, bring this one into the front of the jaw, somewhere around about there, like so. we'll take this one and bring it back to the nose, and then bring this one back somewhere like that. That'll do. You might have to play around with those a little bit more to get them exactly where you need them to be, but for the most part I think that would be okay. So making sure we're in right orthographic still. We'll change some of these other ones. Let's see what we've got. Just going to zoom around a little bit. Now, like I said, I'm not going to animate every single one of these, so I'm not particularly bothered about some of them. But the good thing about keeping these particular bones in place is when I actually use the automatic weight function, it will use these bones to create those automatic weights. So by deleting too many of them, the weight painting might get a bit messed up. So I prefer to keep them there, and then that kind of ties everything in nicely and limits the amount of weight painting that I need to do after the fact to tidy some things up. But you know, again, it's one of those do whatever's going to work best for you, I guess. So we'll just kind of tidy these up a little bit. So we'll just bring this one, maybe, I don't know, somewhere to here, and this one down to there. Just kind of, you know, put them where you think they potentially would want to go, and we can just kind of move these around a little bit. Something like that, perhaps. You want to kind of judge as best you can where you think the movement, you know, how a shark moves. The tail fin is the part that I'm actually going to animate here, or attempt to animate. So you want to kind of get it, the joints, roughly where you think the tail fin or whatever part you're going to animate, get the joints roughly in the right place for that animation to look right and everything else. So we'll just kind of move these somewhere like that, and then we can do these two the back here. So again, something like that. Oh, there's only one there actually. It's this one that's got two, isn't it? This one. So in X-ray mode, if I can drag, I'll actually select both of them, and then I can reposition those into a better place like that. Now these ones are a bit trickier, so you might have to go in a top-down view and you know, play around with those a little bit more. So we select, let's see, yeah, that's fine. Then we'll take that one, put that one there, and put that one, something like that. That'll be okay. Again, if I was doing this, I might do it a bit better, but we go into here, try and line these up a little bit. We can. Like that should be all right. Then we can actually turn on the apply changes to match the bone on the opposite side on the X. And we can select individual ones, and it will do the same on the other one here. So if we go into front orthographic and then select this one, move it up, it will move the opposite side, which is fantastic. So we can do something like that, and then just make sure that they look roughly around about right. So I try and get this one lined up a bit better. Yeah, that should be all right. That's fine. And then this one here. Something like that should be fine. I'm happy with that. That's okay. Might just move this one actually a little bit. I always say that, so I'm really happy with that, and then I change stuff. Now, let's come out of X-ray mode. Let's take this one. Bring that to there, maybe. Something like that. I think that'll be okay. That's fine. Okay, so once we've got everything where it needs to be, make sure that your rotation and scale is applied for everything, so that not going to get any weird stuff going on later on. And then we can skin or parent everything together. So this part is fairly important. Well, actually, it's really important. I say fairly, it's really important. The way that we set everything up in the hierarchy, if you have the actual mesh as the parent and the rig as the child, things won't work properly, if at all. So you need to make sure that the rig is the parent and the mesh is the child. So we do that by basically selecting the mesh first and then shift selecting the rig, the armatures, the bones, and then we can right click and go parent. We want to have an armature deform, so when basically we move an armature, it deforms the mesh. I always go with automatic weights in most cases. So we can click on that, and what it will do there is it will create a set of vertex groups which will then have all of the weight painting applied for each of the different parts, and then you can adjust that as you need to. So again, here with the mesh selected, come up to here and go weight paint, and you can then select each of the different vertex groups which will be assigned to the relevant bone, and that will show what weight is painted, and depending on the color of the weight will be the influence that's taken upon the mesh. So the redder the color, the more influence; the bluer the color, the less influence, and everything in between. So good idea if you are creating your bones from scratch, and then each individual bone separately, then you need to make sure that you name them, because if you've got a lot like we have here, you won't be able to identify which one is which in weight painting mode. You'll only have the vertex vertex groups to go by, so make sure they kind of match into something relevant. Otherwise you could spend a lot of time going backwards and forwards up and down the list here trying to find the one that you want to adjust. So I think most of them will actually be okay. The only one that might not be is the one for the jaw. So depending on which ones I deleted, I may have deleted the wrong one, but we'll have a look through here and see. Jaw master, there we go, that's the one I want. So as you can see there's a little bit of influence being acted on the chest, I guess, whatever that part is, at the rear of the jaw of the shark. So what potentially could happen here is when I rotate this bone, it's going to affect too much of the mesh behind it, which could then look a little bit weird. So before we start messing around with the weight painting, what we'll do is go back into object mode here, and then with the armature group selected, go into pose mode, and then we can select each of the bones here and then just check the deformation of the mesh as we rotate things. So we'll bring up the side panel here, go into rotate. If I move this, you can see that the actual mesh behind is moving too much, and up here as well actually. There's just too much movement going on there for my liking. So what I would potentially do there is want to go in and adjust the weight painting to fix that. And then what we can also do is come back here. So this one here, as you can see, is going forward. So that's your root bone going forward, and then from your root bone going back. So this one here will control everything, and then all of the others will be individually controlled throughout the mesh. So if we move this one, it's going to move that part, and then this one will move that part, and so on and so on. This is our root bone, this one here, that's what everything is connected to. So understanding the bone structure, the hierarchy and everything else is really important, otherwise you could end up trying to animate the wrong part, and the mesh will just rotate and flip around like a mad thing and not do what you want it to do. So what we can do is just kind of test everything out. So we're going to top down, and we can just see, as I say, all I want to do here is animate the rear fin, so to speak. So I'm just going to test this out, and we'll just do like rotate there, that looks really good. And then we can select this bone and rotate there, that looks good. And then this one as well, and that also looks really good. So the weight painting, the automatic weight painting there has worked quite well. So well enough for this anyway, and that's all that matters to me at the moment. So we'll go back into object mode here, reselect the mesh, then come back into weight paint. And we need to kind of just play around with this front one here, so just get the jaw a little bit better than what it is at the moment. So make sure you have the right vertex group selected so that it adjusts the weight for the right bone and everything else. And all we're going to do here is take the weight from full to none, and then left click and just get rid of some of this stuff here. Now weight painting is a nightmare. It's a bit of one of those kind of things. Takes a lot of time to, generally speaking, can take a lot of time to get it right, because it's based against the vertices. So if you haven't got enough geometry to start with, and it's a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you don't want a massive amount of geometry, especially in Farming Simulator, because it will cause lag and things like that. But at the same time, you want enough verts that you can create your weight painting correctly, so that everything moves in the right places and things like that. So we'll just make our brush a little bit bigger here and try and bring this back as best we can towards the jaw. Yeah, something like that I think would work better. There you go. It does take a little while sometimes to update, but just be patient with it. Don't try and do too much all at once, and you should be okay. I think that probably would be all right. We'll just kind of tidy that up a little bit there. Just holding down left mouse button and moving the brush around. Now brush movement is really important. If you just press and hold the brush in one place, nothing will happen. You need to actually move the brush around to make it do its thing. So yeah, we'll just kind of go around and get rid of everything there that we don't need. I believe that it may be possible in Blender, but I think in Maya there is a way to actually select specific vertex or vertices on the mesh and then apply the weight painting directly to the vertices. Like I say, that might be something that's possible in Blender. I'm not 100% sure on that. But for what I want to do here, just doing it manually like this is going to work well enough. So I think that should be okay. Now we've got most of that gone, if not all of it. So that's fine. So we can switch back into object mode, select our armature group, go back into pose mode, and then if we select this bone here and we rotate it, not on that axis, on this axis, we should be able to see, if I go into right orthographic, that it's now not affecting the rest of the mesh quite as it was before, which is exactly how I want it to kind of be. So we'd have the mouth maybe, you know, open so much like that, and then just have it close. Oops, wrong one again. And have it closed like that. Something like that. And then the top one's moving just enough so that the top jaw sort of opens and comes in to show all the teeth, which is about what I would want it to be. Again, very simplistic setup. Take a lot longer time to have the head rotate left and right and you know, all the different fins and whatever move. But again, this is just very simple, very basic stuff, just to demonstrate setting up the skinning process, the parenting process, whatever you want to call it. And then luckily, as I say, we have a rig already created for us as part of the built-in add-on Rigify, and it's just setting up some of the weight painting to give us the best results that we want for the parts that we want to animate. I might do the jaw, I'm not sure yet, we'll see how that goes. Because this part at the back is going to take long enough, I think, anyway, but at least I've got the weight painting sorted there if I wanted to do that at some point. So everything else, I think, as I want it to be, is where I want it to be. So then it's just a case of setting up your animations and whatever else. So by default, the frame rate is set to 24 frames per second. So if we bring up the timeline here, and I'm by no means an expert on this stuff at all, but if we bring up the timeline here, if we go to frame 24, that is 1 second, by what I'm understanding. 24 frames per second, so 24 frames in 1 second. So you have to kind of understand a little bit about the timeline and the frame rate that you're actually using, and then set your start and end point correctly for the type of animation that you want to set up. Because you might have, like, for example, if I wanted to start with the fin, I'd go to frame point 1, and then perhaps maybe, let's say, select this bone here, obviously in pose mode, and then that one would be set at 0, so it starts here. So I step my keyframe I to bring up the keyframe menu and rotation. That will enter my keyframe into there, and then for 1 second of animation, if I then rotate this, let's see now, so if I go rotate on the Y, so if I go on the Z, sorry, 0.1, like so, that gives me a bit of movement on the tail there, enough for what I want. Then that would be at frame 24 for 1 second. So here I would type in, so you need to move your time, your frame counter up to the next frame before you add the next animation. So we go to frame 24 for 1 second. If I actually show you here, show seconds, you can see at frame 24 we're at 1 second. So there is information here available, but that can sometimes be more confusing to me, at least, than trying to work it out in my head. But so we'll go to 0.1, and then we can add in our keyframes. We go I and rotation, as we're only marking the rotation, we're not doing anything else with this. And then we go back to the center, so from 24 go to 48, so we go up to here, 48, and then what I can do is just copy these because they are at the center, so just go Shift D and then bring them across to frame 24, and as you can see there, it's moved back. So as I scrub through, we've got our start with the tail dead on, and then it goes to the Z-axis of 0.1, and then back to the center. And I would continue on like so. But again, in Maya, when you do this, you set all your keyframes up and everything else, create your character sets, and then when you do the export process, everything is done for you. There's no further interaction required there, apart from maybe a couple of tick boxes in the exporter, and the animation is all baked in, and the XML entry in the i3D is all created for you, lovely jubbly. But unfortunately with Blender, and even though we've got this new i3D exporter tools on the GitHub page, it's still not working with animations, and it's a bit of a limitation really with Blender. I don't want to say that because animations in Blender are more than available, if that's the right word. We've always been able to do animations, as far as I'm aware, for a long time in Blender, but it's getting it from Blender into an i3D and into Giants Editor, with everything being done for us by either Blender, the i3D exporter tools, or the exporter itself, and so on and so on. All of those different parts need to join together. Now, the way that, again, animations are done in Maya are very different to what they are done in Blender. So the coding behind everything just doesn't key together properly, doesn't work together, because there's no way, to my knowledge, to create that character set that is required to write all the correct information in the i3D on the export process. So that's where it kind of falls over, and that's where we have to do things a little bit manually later on and enter that in ourselves. So because we have to do it manually, it's more important to make sure that your timeline and your start and end frames are what you want them to be, what you need them to be to get the correct animation. So you potentially might want to, say, go to 30 frames per second and then reduce down your end frame to 150, so that you can then do 30-second increments instead of 24. You can do 30 frame increments instead of 24 frame increments. That might be easier to get your head around. So you would start at 1 and then go from 1 up to 30. So we would just basically move this up to 30, and then we go to 60, and then take these ones and move them to 60, and then I would go up to 90, and then I can go the opposite direction here. So with this one, I would just go negative 0.1 and then enter my keyframe there. So we'll go I and then rotation, and then what I can do here is take this one and put that at 120. So we'll take this one, Shift D, move that to there, and then we're going to basically just go back to the opposite direction again. So if we go up to, I'm going to go all the way to the end, 149, and then we can take the, because we're going to the center there, let's just make sure, so center left, center right, and then center, and then 149 would be this one here. So we'll go Shift D and just basically move that all the way over to 149. So now we've got this tail movement like so, and when we play through that, you can see we've now got a nice tail movement as we want it to be. But obviously that's at a specific speed, at a specific rate, and all the rest of it, because we're running at 30 frames per second, and whatever else. So you have to kind of, work it out best you can, what type of animation you want to get, if you want that to be faster or slower or whatever else. It's all about how that can how that's sort of set up. And then somewhere in amongst all of this, we could potentially say, okay, fine, what we want to do then is I want to do the same again for this bone here. So we'll start at 1 and we'll just add in a keyframe. Now unfortunately, if I select this one and then select all of these, I cannot just copy those and paste them directly onto this bone. What I have to do is set at least one keyframe here first. So making sure that it's on keyframe 1 on this bone, I select this bone, I, and then rotation. Then I come back to this bone, select everything with A, Control C to copy, go back to this one, Control V to paste. And then I can do the same with this one here. So I can take that one, again on keyframe 1, I, and rotation. And come to this one and make sure they're all selected. Control C, go back to this bone, Control V. So now I've got my animation copied across all those bones. So if I come in here now and actually run the animation, you can see we have this nice arc on the tail going all the way around because I've animated all 3 of those bones. So there's lots to think about there, in my opinion. how you can set all of that up. So what we'll do then is at the last here, we'll just animate the mouth a little bit, the jaw. So you don't want this to be flapping up and down all the time. So you kind of have to, again, figure out where you think it would be best suited for that to do whatever. And again, we're only working with 150 frames here, so you have to be a little bit kind of think about where you're going to put everything. So we might say, okay, let's go to frame, I don't know, 35. Let's say there, I don't know. And then we'll just do eye and rotation. And then we can go to maybe, let's see, I don't know, 55. Let's see how this works. So we'll go to 55. Then I'll close the jaw. And I'll go eye and rotation. Then we'll come up to 65. That's 65, yeah, 65. And we can come back to where we were before. So we'll copy this one here. Is it that one? Yeah, I think it's that one. So Shift D, and we'll bring that across to there. And then we can kind of look at that. So basically that's what's going to happen, but it's going to happen quite quickly there. So as we do that, it's going to go close, open, close, close, open, whatever. So you might need to kind of, you know, maybe do that a couple of times, up to you. So I could select these. So let's see, we've got 35, 55. So if I select all of those, that one, that one, that one, and we'll go Shift D, and we'll just bring that up to, let's say, there, like that. Did that actually duplicate? I think it did. Let's try that. So we're coming to here, mouth closes and opens, mouth closes and opens. There we go. Yeah. So something like that, you could do something like that. So now we have got this animation. So we go back in a object mode here. And let's see if I can hide those, and we'll play. So the tail's waggling and the mouth is now opening and closing, and we have all of our animations set up. And there we go. Not the best, I agree, you know, but it's a starting point. It's, you know, it's very time consuming, so I'm just doing this very quickly and whatever else to try and get through it. But because again, you know, there's a lot of XML we need to enter in and do things to make sure that everything joins together properly. So I think what I'll do is I'll end it here, and then we'll do the other part later on, because the XML is going to be a nightmare. But the animation is set up. We've got all of our different parts where they need to be for the the keyframes are all set where they want to be, or where they need to be, to get everything to move that I want to move. And then it's just a case of exporting this out. So we'll do that. I think we'll export this out for the next project, so we can see. Actually, no, I won't. We'll do that in the next video. Yeah, we'll do that next video. Let's start from scratch there. We'll export this out in the next video, and then we'll work out the XML and the timing and all the different parts that needs to be added in to get everything animated correctly in the Giants editor.